Today we shall be discussing about the special issues in young women with early breast cancer. And as we know that in this part of the world, we see a lot of young women who are affected with breast cancer. And so next few minutes we shall be discussing about the guideline statements about the young breast cancers, the specific issues about the overtreatment, psychological distress, hereditary predisposition, little bit, because later Dr. Ofera will also address that, body image issues, inadequate representation in trials, fertility-related issues which are really important. What could be the strategies, pregnancy after and pregnancy with breast cancer, which are really a challenging issue with these young women, and our own data, the Tata Memorial Hospital data on young breast cancer and pregnancy-associated breast cancer. So this we shall be covering in the next few minutes. So this, we are well aware that the guidelines suggested that, the young woman, there is a need that there should be focused clinical trials to address the specific issues. And the very important issues being fertility, psychosocial support, genetic counseling, and sexual quality of life. And many times these get ignored, especially when in the very busy centers or with a high turnover. Doctors are really concentrated on survival statistics, and the quality of life issues take a back seat. So I think these are very important, and especially for the young woman, there are different kind of challenges we must look into. Then the treatment determinants are essentially biology of the disease, the stage of the disease, genetic predisposition, comorbidities, and patient choice, very, very important. So age alone should not be the criteria to give aggressive treatment. And we must avoid overtreatment. Many times this happens is just because by virtue of being young, they are slightly overtreated. So these are the important messages in the guidelines. Now we'll go for the specific issues one by one. And also, this is the TMH data. We have in comparatively larger cohort of around 1228 patients who are the women who were less than 40 years. We have done this analysis and we found what are the challenges and specific issues in this part of the world, and we will show that in a while. So essentially, young women, they are having aggressive biology, and also many times there is a risk of overtreatment. And the prospective trials dedicated to young patients are key to avoid such things. There was one important study, the POSH cohort study, which was conducted in 127 hospitals in UK, and young women's breast cancer study coordinated by Dana-Farber and Harvard. And preliminary data from these and other studies show that a greater proportion of luminal B and ER negative tumors in young patients, increased risk of early relapse, and a more unfavorable long-term outcome for young women with especially ER-beta tumors, is particularly compared with older women. And treatment decisions in young women should not be really driven by their age, but rather by their biology, to ensure appropriate and tailored treatment and to avoid overtreatment. So this is our hospital's data, wherein 1228 patients over a period of 2015 and 16, as I said, we see a large number of young breast cancers. And these were the women who were treated with curative intent. So they were non-metastatic and or oligometastatic disease. And this is the 36 was their median age, and this is the distribution among various age groups. They were, a good number of patients were very young also. So 14% of all newly diagnosed breast cancer women are having young breast cancer in our cohort, which is higher than what is being published from the other part of the world. And a lot of it is because we see higher incidence of young breast cancer because our age pyramid is also very young, and this is true for other SAARC countries as well, including Bangladesh. So these are the tumor characteristics, and we see that we see aggressive biology. Of course, we see higher T size. Again, a lot of it is due to that patients present at a late stage because of logistic reasons. We see that node positive disease are pretty common, and 75% of our population was node positive. 30% N2, N3, higher grades, 87% grade 3, TNBCs, 34% really high, of these numbers, and HER2 positive again 27%. So the young women are characterized by these aggressive biological features and high tumor burden. This is about the treatment characteristics. Again, majority of them, because they presented late, they were no locally advanced stage with biology also aggressive. They received multimodality care. 50% of those underwent breast conservations. 80% needed to receive radiotherapy, and hormone therapy were given to all hormone receptor positive. And OFS is not very commonly given, but around 9% of patients they received various issues. And they were tolerance was good, with 6% grade 3 for toxicities and 4 toxic deaths. So a majority of patients received anthracycline taxane as per the current guidelines, and some of the patients received platinum in addition. So patients around 21% patients received neoadjuvant. Complete adjuvant was in around 47%, and the neoadjuvant and sandwich approach, wherein the surgery in between as a practice here in this part of the world, around 32% of patients. About the targeted therapy, so it was trastuzumab use was there, but not all patients could afford, and also many of those patients they received the short course trastuzumab because of logistic reasons. The pathological CR rate was high in TNBCs as expected, and HER2 positive patients who received trastuzumab, while it was low in hormone receptor positive patients. So again, these data underscores the limitation of targeted therapy availability in this part of the world, which is again applicable to many of the low middle income countries. And so 55% of eligible population actually could afford, and half of them in short course. So we generally use 3 months or 6 months as per the affordability and support available. And we know that majority of our patients they pay from their own pocket. Insurance is really a limitation. So these are the real world issues I want to highlight. So this is a survival analysis, and we see that the DFS at 5 year around 59% and 79.6% OS. This is a stage-wise distribution, and we can see that the locally in the stage 3 and the oligometastatic, this is stage 4, there is survival goes down, while in earlier stages it is good. So which again underscores the need that we need to detect them in early stage. This is the uni and multivariate analysis, and a univariate analysis, agent diagnosis, T size, N size, LVI and pathological CR were found to be significant, and hormone receptor status for OS and multivariate age, ET and hormone receptor status LVI was significant. So about the psychological distress and the hereditary factors, body image, etc. So hereditary breast cancer predisposition is more common amongst the women who may influence decisions on both local and systemic disease management. And women with an identified germline mutation also need to tackle the additional challenges of future cancer risk. And there can be risk-reducing surgeries, cascade family risk assessment, etc., pre-implantation gestational testing. These all cause additional stress to these young women. Chemo-induced alopecia, which is I found very, very distressing, and many women even they talk and they say when you give a really ear to hear them. I found even if they are illiterate, uneducated, then also they feel very distressed with this kind of complication, and at times they say it is more distressing than losing a breast because it is very apparent and everybody can see that, and this is the stigma which reminds them of their cancer all the time. So all these decisions are often accompanied by an extra psychosocial distress and dealt sensitively by experts, preferably in MDT settings. We also try to do that. Almost all of our patients they should be discussed among the multidisciplinary tumor boards so that we can reach to a common consensus to best benefit them. This is our data regarding the scalp cooling. So in this part of the world, this was the first trial, and we conducted this in Tata Memorial Center, the randomized control trial of scalp cooling for prevention of chemo-induced alopecia, and we found it was equally successful, because there was a lot of concerns and before this starting this trial that because the climatic conditions very different in India and this part of the world, whether this will be so much successful as in the Western world. But we have shown that there was equal success, and also we tested the newer endpoint, a growth of hairs, which was also found to be very positive. So this is a hope for these women that they can preserve their quality of life by preserving their hairs. So this is the one of the patient who has received a scalp cooling versus a controlled patient at the primary endpoint, and we can see the difference. So this the data got published, and the breast and sorry, I think the slides started moving before. Right. So now we will come to the fertility related issues in the stock tour and as part of the strategies. So again, the guideline statement is that fertility and pregnancy related issues are one of the top 3 priorities with young women with breast cancer, and we must look into that. So these are the predictors and demographic, medical, psychosocial characteristics, disease and treatment variables, and they predict the unique biological and behavioral outcomes. And on the right hand side, this is the outcomes wherein quality of life, menopause, fertility, behavior, etc. So this is the interactive. This was the interactive cartoon, and we know that failure to address these concerns may negatively impact on patients' outcome. And this data, which is very alarming, and suggests that early discontinuation of tamoxifen intake in younger women with breast cancer may affect, even the survival outcomes, and it is very important to address early. So the risk of treatment-related premature ovarian insufficiency, the determinants of it were age, chemotherapy regimen, cumulative chemotherapy dose. So what kind of chemotherapy, how long, and at what age it is exposed, is all are important. And all the guidelines suggested that oncofertility counseling is mandatory as soon as possible after diagnosis, and we must address it appropriately in the clinics. So this was a very interesting data by Lambertini et al. That physicians' knowledge and attitudes towards fertility preservation in cancer patients, and alarming figures were found, and 50% of these trained physicians were not really having a good knowledge, which is concerning, because if the caregivers, the care providers, they are not with sufficient knowledge, then how things will be taken care properly. So this is a field wherein a lot of efforts need to be put, especially in this part of the world. So there are various techniques, and we'll see a very briefly how they work, because in the interest of time. So embryo-oocyte cryopreservation, it has shown that pregnancy rate is up to 61% and reasonably good efficacy, we can say. Pregnancy rate for oocyte cryopreservation is noted as 41%. Then this is the safety data. So these procedures were found to be safe, no detriment. And who are the best candidates? So basically, if the possibility to delay the start of chemotherapy by 2 weeks or more is okay, which is the case in majority, especially if we are talking about breast cancer, majority of our patient, it is not the Burkitt's lymphoma kind of a situation wherein every other day the tumor is proliferating very fast, then perhaps we can give these young women a chance to preserve their embryo or oocyte. And embryo preservation is having the best success rate. Then the cryopreservation of ovarian tissue, if embryo it's not the possibility. So this is the next option, and this is the efficacy data. So around 51% natural conception rates. However, there is a risk of malignant contamination by the type of cancer. So so that has to be taken into account when we are practicing this. And it is to be considered in patients diagnosed at a very young age who cannot perform embryo or oocyte cryopreservation. Then, so this is the next method. This is not the first method of choice. This is important, and who are the best candidates for this kind of techniques who cannot delay the treatment initiation, and in prepubertal girl, again very important because the embryo or oocytes are not feasible at that point. Ovarian suppression with GnRH analogs during chemotherapy, so it is easy way, and the majority of the time, this can be practiced. So this is the hypothalamus pituitary axis and how it functions. So it was found that GnRH group, the pregnancy rate was found to be 10% versus in control group 5%, almost doubling. And this is the left hand side. It is the premature ovarian insufficiency rates, which can also be largely benefited by this kind of techniques. So in ER positive and in ER negative, safety data is established, and this can be practiced in the patient interested in ovarian function preservation, and also who are interested in fertility preservation. It should be understood that it is mainly to preserve the ovarian function and adjunct to fertility preservation. So other techniques of fertility preservation must be practiced. This should not be taken as a alone method. If this can be done. So how we approach young breast cancer in 2021? So the patient who wish to preserve fertility, we need to see that what is the time window available. If it is available for more than 2 weeks, which is the case in majority, then ovarian stimulation, then oocyte embryo cryopreservation, and then GnRH during chemotherapy could be the best bet. If that is not the case, or availability of time windows less than 2 weeks, then we go for ovarian tissue cryopreservation. So this is the cartoon depicting the flow, suggested flow. And our data, Tata Memorial data for early breast cancer fertility preservation. So a limited number of patients only received fertility preservation for various reasons. Our age of first pregnancy is also low. So many times, even these young women who are less than 40, they completed their family. So that is one of the reasons they didn't want to practice that. And also it is an added cost. Again, insurance is a major problem. And the fertility related expenses to go to another center to meet the fertility specialist and do all this is a cumbersome. So that is the major limiting factors. And in the background that they have already one or two child, then it is not a priority in many. When we analyzed our data, mostly they received LHRH analogs who have underwent fertility preservation options. And when we tried to rigorously follow them up from RIMBO, because they come to our center, which is a tertiary care cancer center from all over the country, and half of those could be contracted, and 11 were the nulliparous prior to starting chemotherapy. 7 were really keen on pregnancy post chemotherapy, and 4 among those could actually conceive. So of course, there are limitation of this kind of data collection, but at least this gives some information about how things work as far as the fertility related issues are concerned. So this is a major niche area, and we need to work on that with the help of collaborative efforts. So pregnancy after and pregnancy with breast cancer. So pregnancy, this is very alarming that breast cancer patients have the lowest chance among cancer survivors to have a subsequent pregnancy. And because again, they reach to borderline age when they develop breast cancer, unlike the sarcoma patients. So another major area of interest is sarcomas. So those Ewing's and osteosarcoma, these happens in young girls, second decade of life. So these prepubertal or pubertal girls, they regain their menstrual function. They have a lot of time to recover from the stress of chemotherapy, and later they conceive, because they have 10 to 20 years. However, these breast cancer patients, when they acquire breast cancer at the age of 40 or so, they have very limited time period which is left, and the ovarian reserve is also compromised. So this was a survey on physicians' knowledge about understanding if a pregnancy and breast cancer survival increase the risk of recurrence, and we can see that what are the responses. So again, we need to educate even the caregivers in this regard. It was shown that pregnancy after breast cancer is safe even in ER positive and negative both, and even in BRCA carriers, it is found to be safe. So this is an important study, the positive trial, pregnancy after breast cancer appears safe based on the current evidence, and positive will further enlighten us. So they are allowing a break in to allow conception, delivery, and breastfeeding for around 2 years. And it is important because many of these women, they reach their borderline age. So if you continue giving them 5 or 10 years of endocrine therapy, then perhaps they will never be able to beget the biological children. So to allow that, can we safely do that? This trial will answer this important question. So then the breast cancer during pregnancy, again, very important and challenging, because many times these are very precious pregnancies. This is the first pregnancy and woman already reaching to the borderline age. We must be careful in taking this pregnancy to term. So if it is in first trimester, the systemic treatment can lead to malformation risk, that is 20%. So second trimester onward, systemic treatment can be given. Then various other treatments, surgery can be done in all trimesters, radiotherapy and hormonal therapy and targeted therapy after the delivery. So these kind of factors we consider when we decide upon what therapy, which trimester. So gestational age at diagnosis, staging of tumor, biology of tumor, hormone and HER2 status, genetic status, patient's general health, patient desire, and sign symptoms. And definitely this kind of management must be in expert centers. So we are having a large registry here in this part, and we do multidisciplinary decisions, and also we involve the nearby Vadia hospital, wherein the obstetricians and fetal medicine expert is also part of our this study, as well as the practical managements. So we try that as far as possible, we try to save the oncologic outcomes of mother as well as the fetal outcomes. So this data is showing that it's not the systemic therapy which causes problem if it is used appropriately, rather it is the prematurity which was correlated with the worst cognitive outcomes. So we must try to avoid preterm delivery. That is a loud and clear messages. So the general recommendation to treat pregnancy during pregnancy with breast cancer, or breast cancer during pregnancy, I would say that oncologic treatment should adhere as much as possible to standardized treatment. Chemotherapy is generally contraindicated during the first trimester, and taxane-based therapy can be safely delivered in second and third, and targeted hormone afterwards. Again, doses according to actual weight, and avoid underdosing. Do not increase the taxane dose. Data are limited, and clinical data do not show inferior efficacy. So these are the major principles, and also we try to stop chemotherapy 3 weeks prior to delivery, so that we can avoid septicemia, infection risk, etc. during a delivery to mother and the neonate. So this is our published data in this regard from this gestational registry, and now we have expanded it to involve all other cancers as well. This was in breast cancer. And this is the data, and the oncologic outcomes, and at the last follow-up, the fetal outcomes were also noted as fine, and they were developed. They experienced normal milestones majority. One was preterm, who was having some challenges in his school performance. Otherwise, one of them attained the normal milestones as well. So towards the end, in the interest of time, so young women with breast cancer are having specific challenges, including risk of over-treatment, which should be avoided, and psychological distress. However, growing resources are available and should be utilized. Oncofertility counseling is a must, irrespective of the disease stage, and embryo and or oocyte cryopreservation should be discussed as a standard option, and ovarian tissue cryopreservation as an alternative. Temporary ovarian function suppression with GnRH analogs during chemo should be considered to preserve ovarian function, but not as an alternative to cryopreservation techniques for fertility preservation. So it is an adjunct. After adequate treatment and follow-up, pregnancy after breast cancer is safe, including among patients with hormone receptor positive disease and BRCA carriers. Pregnancy with breast cancer is managed as far as possible to standardized published protocols for young non-pregnant patients. However, management is trimester dependent. and precision care is practiced every time. Multidisciplinary care and adequate representation in trials is the key to help them navigate the disease and survivorship issues. Precision therapy of each young woman with breast cancer is really way forward. And I would say we must customize the product to the customer. And thank you very much for this very patient listening. And I would like to acknowledge my entire disease management group. We work in a multidisciplinary team and try to take the best decisions. All the NGOs who support these patients, the students, and Dr. Matthew, who shared some of his fertility related slides, patients and families. Thank you very much.